Thanks for joining me here at the Real ResQ podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. Pumped to be part of the family of the Helicast network. If you haven't checked them out already, check out the Hangar Z podcast, the Helicopter podcast, and Vertical MRO podcast. They are all at verticalhelicast.com. Stinking awesome. I love being part of this group. Now, let me take a moment to give a shout out to our sponsors, Switlick, manufacturing the highest quality, safety, and survival product for aviation, marine, and military markets. Check them out today at switlick.com. Bell, they're a company with passion to push the limits of vertical lift. Check them out today at bellflight.com. And Collins Aerospace. For over 4 decades, Goodrich Rescue Hoists have saved countless lives across the globe. Check them out today at collinsaerospace.com. Now, coming up in this episode, we are joined by another United States Coast Guard flight mechanic. He's coming to us with some epic stories from out his entire career with the U.S. Coast Guard. So please welcome our next guest, Mr. Adam Sustachek. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ podcast. Today I've got another United States Coast Guard flight mechanic. He started as an AD. He then went to AMT. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Adam Sustachek. What's up, dude?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you, Quinny.
It's good. Yeah, good to see you too, man. This because like you and I were stationed together for a hot minute in East City, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, when I went down there as an airman before school. And then I went up to Kodiak, and then you came up there in Kodiak after me. And that was like our only time together.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I think I stayed mostly on the West Coast.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. But, I was actually thinking about it. I think there's a possibility that you and I did a trip either to Cordova or over to Cold Bay.
I did do a trip to Cordova and Kodiak. I never made it to Cold Bay or to, I never made it out that far. So Cordova was the only deployment I did out of Kodiak.
I think you and I did. I think we were on opposite, like 24 on 24 off type thing. But I remember it. It's all coming back to me right now. Just saying.
Okay. Yep.
I'm
sure we did some.
Could happen.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Adam, dude, thank you so much for coming on. You had a long time in the Coast Guard. As a matter of fact, you did 25 years in the Coast Guard. My gosh, good for you. Congratulations. So
thank you.
But let's start with a little background before we get into stories and some cool rescues and awards that you earned. How the heck did you get? Well, let's start with where are you from? What brought you into the Coast Guard? And then aviation.
All right. So I grew up in Oceanside, California, which is North San Diego County area. I got out of school, high school. I spent about 2 years messing around, getting in trouble, and finally woke up one day after a binger and decided I needed to get my shit together. So I decided I was going to join the military, the Navy, in fact. So my parents were out grocery shopping, and I left them a letter on the kitchen table saying I'm going to join the Navy. This was right at the beginning of the first Gulf War. So I went to the Navy recruiter, and they took one look at me, and they were like, "There's no way. We're not bringing this guy in." And I have a GED, and I don't have a high school diploma. So they made up this story where I had to have 2 years of college in order to get into the Navy. So not knowing any better, I left and I went over to my friend's house. A short time later, there's a knock on the door, and we go to the door. It's my dad. He asked me, "Hey, what happened? Did you go to the Navy recruiter?" I'm like, "Yeah, but they wouldn't take me." I could just see the sigh of relief on his face. Like I didn't sign any paperwork. So he was like, "Yeah, your mom's really concerned. We just want to make sure that you're, making the right call." He said, "Your cousin's thinking about joining the Coast Guard. Why don't I take you guys to the Coast Guard recruiter?" So he took us, I think a week later, he took us to the Coast Guard recruiter. Um, the recruiter gave us the spiel. I was sold. My cousin was sold. We were like, yeah, let's do it. We were going to do the buddy system, started going through the process, and last minute, my cousin decided it wasn't for him. He didn't want to do it. And I was just like, I got to get out of town. I can't, I'm going to end up in a gutter or something if I don't do this. So that's what I did. So I joined, February of 91. That's when I enlisted and went off to boot camp.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, can I touch on something real quick? And that is, like, I'm going to start with, or plug in right here. You did 25 years in the U.S. Coast Guard. You earned a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to get into in a minute. You did an incredible job. And for anybody out there I'm going to throw this out there, for the GED, is a general education diploma degree.
I think it's document. I don't even know. Honestly, it's been 30 plus years, man. I don't remember.
Awesome. Well, the reason I say that is, like, and this is for all the kids out there that just, if you feel like you're lost and you're not there, like, high school sucked. I didn't, well, all right, maybe not for everybody, but like, it was not like top for me. I was not graduating top of my class, but like the Coast Guard, the military, something like that, to get into something like that, that's where we thrive. And that's where we go above and beyond. And so good for you for stepping up and going above and beyond, dude. So
thank you.
Throwing that out there for anybody who needs a little inspiration right now. Boom, let's go.
Yep. Yeah. There are times in the Coast Guard where, I would say the majority of us, you do your first 4 years, it's ready to time to re-enlist, and you're having that second thought, like, do I want to do another 4 years? Do I want to commit? All this other kind of stuff. And the more you do, the easier it gets. So, yeah.
Dude, Adam, that's badass. All right, so you get through boot camp. Where'd you go first?
So out of boot camp, I went to the Coast Guard cutter Morgenthau, based out of Alameda, California. It was when we first showed up, though, it was in dry dock up in Seattle. So they flew us from boot camp. We went to Alameda and we stayed in these condemned barracks that were still barracks from when they had boot camp back in Alameda way back in the day. I mean, the windows were busted out. Heating didn't work. It was crazy. So we were there for like a week or two, and then they put us all on a C-130 and flew us up to Seattle to pick up the ship out of dry dock. I was on there for about 2.5 years, spent the majority of the time in San Diego, my hometown, because we spent a lot of time training with the Navy because it was an all-new crew on an all-new boat. So it was like being at home. It was great. Loved it. During that time, I knew I wanted to be in aviation since the very beginning. So I applied for aviation electronic technician at the time, AE, and submitted my package. And about 2 months later, we got the results back, and I was denied because we had the wrong ASVAB scores. And what happened was, this was back before things were on the computer. The yeoman had taken the copy of my ASVAB scores that had a crease down the middle of it. So she added the wrong ASVAB scores together. So when we looked at my ASVAB scores, they were incorrect. I didn't meet the point requirement to be an AE. So I was super frustrated. I was like, I just need to get off this ship. At that point, I'm on the ship for almost 2 years. I'm like, I got to get out of here. So there was an on-the-job training opportunity with storekeeper to be a storekeeper, striking storekeeper. I applied for that. I got it. So I started learning how to be a storekeeper. And within about 6 to 8 months, I got qualified and was making SK3. And they said, okay, you got to put in where you want to go. And I knew I wanted to go to an air station. I wanted to learn all about aviation supply. I was like, if I can't be in aviation, at least want to get as close as I can. So I put in for Air Station San Diego is number 2 on my list. Air Station Sacramento is number 1 because I was dating a girl in the Bay Area at the time. And, thought it was going to work out.
Of course.
Yeah. And I got San Diego. So I got to go to San Diego, which again is my hometown. So headed there shortly thereafter.
Right on, man. And so the first thing I want to shout out, because this is around 1996, give or take.
I got there in '93. I got to San Diego in '93
as a storekeeper.
As a storekeeper, correct.
Okay, so you haven't even actually gone into the aviation side of it yet, like to AM school. We're gonna get that in a sec. But so, all right, I gotta ask. So, do you go to school before this little enlisted person of the year, San Diego recognized?
No. So in San Diego, I started out in the warehouse. That's where all new storekeepers start out, in the warehouse, and then I moved up to purchasing. Being the purchasing person for different parts of the base. And then I moved into aviation supply. And so I moved into aviation supply in '95. And back then we had the HU-25 Falcons and the H-65 Eurocopters in San Diego. And in '96, there was a decision to get rid of all of those and move the H-60s down to San Diego. So being the aviation storekeeper, I was responsible for basically packing all of the parts and supplies up, sending all the Falcon parts back to Elizabeth City. And then we were swapping helicopters with San Francisco, Air Station San Francisco. So their 60s were coming down to San Diego. Our 65s are going up to San Francisco. So I was responsible for packing up all their stuff in the giant storage containers that all the parts were in, putting them on the back of a truck. And then I had to fly up to San Francisco and meet the parts there, unload everything, and then teach the storekeepers there about all of the parts, where the parts were located, and all that kind of stuff. So you talked about the enlisted person of the year. That's basically what I got it for, was that. I guess you'd have to read the citation, but I guess I saved the Coast Guard hundreds of hours and millions of dollars or something like that. But
that's amazing. Yeah. So I'll tell you what, I won't read the whole thing, but the beginning of this is really cool. So it says, congratulations on your recent selection as Coast Guard Activities San Diego Enlisted Person of the Year for 1996. You were chosen from among the 4 Enlisted Person of the Quarter winners as the member of Activities San Diego whose performance best exemplifies that of the ideal petty officer and most embodied the Coast Guard's core values of honor, respect, and devotion to duty. And it does go on. 100,000 pounds of HU-25, H-865, and H-860 material ran like clockwork, due in large part of your hard work, dedication, and attention to detail. Bro!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was... I felt like I was in my element. I loved hanging out with the aviation guys. Having the parts, like when I had on-call duty for the week, usually what happens is, this is back in the beeper days, I would have a beeper on my belt, and the night crew would call and say, "Hey, we need you to come in because we have to get this part. We can't find it." And I would ask them, what's the part? And they would tell me. I'm like, "Hey, go to this Vidmar. I believe it's in this drawer." Like, I knew that system so well that they would just go and they would find, "Yep, we found it. There it is. We got it." I'm like, "All right, just make sure you check it out." That kind of thing. It worked out really well. One thing I wanted to mention, kind of a funny story. When I met the parts up in San Francisco, I was responsible for offloading the Vidmars with all of the shipping. I mean, the storage containers with all the parts in them. I was responsible for using the forklift to get those off the back of the truck and then take them into the warehouse. One of the bins, I brought it out and I was going up a ramp, and I went up the ramp too hard, and the whole bin fell over. And all it had were these tiny little packages of O-rings. If you know those tiny little paper packages of O-rings, it was a giant bin, just drawers full of these O-rings. So when the storage bin fell over, the drawers flew open and all of these O-rings went flying all over the place. And so it just so happened that at that moment, as we were like trying to clean everything up, one of the mechs comes in and says, "Hey, I'm looking for this O-ring." And it just happened to be in that drawer. Luckily, it only took us like 20 minutes. We found it. It only took us like 20 minutes to find it. But it was just ironic that it just happened to be in that particular storage bin. So luckily we didn't damage it. Luckily the storage bin still worked after the fact. Those Vidmars, I don't know if you remember those things. They were like
I do
super
very
tough.
much so. Yeah. Yeah, we put them through hell all the time. Changing drawer size, changing the inside of the drawers. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yep.
Dude, that's hilarious. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
All right, so Adam, what brings you to aviation then?
So it was during that time that I was hanging out with the aviation guys. The storekeeper shop was right next to the hangar, is attached to the hangar. So I loved it. I wanted to be in helicopters. I wanted to fly. So I put in for AM school. I got picked up a year later, got sent to school for that. When was that? That was in 97. And it was during that time, there was a lot of guys that you and I have both been stationed with in the past, both in the rescue swimmer school and in the AD and AM school, that went through about that same time. Shannon Scaff was going to school at the same time. Luke Hockley, Jake Trikel, all sorts of guys that you probably remember too. So we were all going through school about the same time. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. So you graduate from AM school, and then you go to your first unit in Sitka, Alaska, as now an AM. Yeah.
Correct.
That's awesome.
Yep.
At least you know where all the parts and everything are.
That's right. I'm really good at finding parts. Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah. Sitka was pretty uneventful for me that first couple of years. I didn't get qualified as a flight mechanic at that time. They were pretty booked with flight mechanics. We had an influx of new guys coming in from A school. So there were a lot of guys ahead of me that were getting qualified. But I got aircrew qualified there, and I just learned a lot. I had a really good opportunity to learn a lot about working on the aircraft. I became an expert at the fuel systems. I don't know how many fuel bladders I changed out in the 60 there. I had a really good sniffer for fuel leaks when we would do the air pressure tests. So it worked out. Good. It worked out pretty well. Yeah.
That's cool.
And then and then from there, I went to Elizabeth City in 1999.
Which is about the same time that I got there as an airman.
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I got qualified as a flight mechanic there, and that's when I started to get into search and rescue. Was in Elizabeth City.
Okay. So now that you're qualified flight mechanic, yes. This is one of my favorite questions. Do you remember your very first rescue?
I do. It was during the day, overcast day, but the weather wasn't bad. I don't remember who my pilots were, but Jerry Hoover was my rescue swimmer. And it was a medical evacuation off of a fishing boat. So it was off the coast of Virginia, not too far off. As we pull up, again, first case, I'm nervous. I'm like, I don't know what to expect, right? I'm hoping I got a big platform to put Jerry down on and all this other kind of stuff. And as we pull up, we decide that we're going to hoist from the bow of the vessel, the front of the vessel. And I look down and it looks huge. I'm like, oh, thank God, like this is going to work great. But as we get closer, I suddenly realize that there's a cable running right down the middle of the front of the boat. So that just cut my hoisting area in half right then and there. So I get Jerry hooked up. We're ready to go, deploy swimmer. I'm sending him down, and I keep having to look up because I want to make sure that we're clear of the mast and everything like that. And I'm looking down. I'm putting Jerry down. I look up again. I look down. Jerry hits the deck. His feet are on the deck. I look back up. I look down. Jerry's off the deck because I put him down at the top of the wave by accident. So I look up and I look back down, and he's off, and his helmet contacts the cable, and the cable slides off of his helmet and hits him in the shoulder. And so he's like stuck. He's holding this cable like this, stuck on his shoulder. And I immediately two block him down. I'm like, oh shit. And I two block him down, and he gets down. Luckily he wasn't injured. Everything was fine. But that was like the immediate, like, okay, I gotta be more aware of sea state, that kind of thing. So yeah, that was it. Everything else went smoothly after that. No big deal. We got the guy to the hospital and everything, and it was fine. But yeah, that was an eye opener for me for sure.
Your very first rescue.
Yeah.
Damn, Adam.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Did Jerry yell at you when you got back on the plane? He would have yelled at me. That's why I'm asking.
I don't remember if he yelled at me. I think I had a stern talking to, probably, knowing Jerry.
I love Jerry.
But,
Jerry, love.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, but yeah, Jerry's a good guy. So I felt really bad awesome for that. I was just thankful that he wasn't injured.
Yeah, I actually know the wire that you're talking about, and it's actually on quite a few ships out there that have a setup, and they have that wire that goes from like the mast or the center of the boat all the way to the very front, the bow of the boat. And it's like, and you don't see it until you get right over it. And you're like, oh man, you gotta be careful of that. So, dude,
yeah, crazy. Yeah,
hey,
I was so disappointed.
Good job.
Thank you.
It's all good. It's all good, man. You got the guy off. Jerry was fine. He was fine. He's fine.
That's right.
Dang, man. Right on. Good for you, brother. Yep. That's good. All right. So now I want to touch on another one in 2000 because you earned yourself a commendation. You earned yourself, Coast Guard Commendation Medal. And I'm gonna get into this one because this one, you and Shannon Scaff went on. Shannon's actually talked about this a little bit, but this is pretty awesome. So now we get your perspective, but let me read it first. So here it is. Citation to accompany the award of the Coast Guard Commendation Medal to Adam D. Sustachek, Aviation Maintenance Technician, 2nd Class, United States Coast Guard. Petty Officer Sustachek is cited for outstanding achievement while serving as flight mechanic aboard Coast Guard Helicopter 6031 on the evening of 29 May 2000. The aircrew was engaged in a perilous night rescue of 2 persons and their pet dog from the sailing vessel Irish Mist that sank 110 nautical miles northeast of Coast Guard Air Station Elizabeth City amid a severe, unforecasted storm. The rescue helicopter flew through torrential rains, 60-knot winds, 200-foot ceilings, and near-zero visibility in order to locate the Irish Mist, battered by raging seas in excess over 20 feet. Shortly after arriving on scene, Petty Officer Sustachek skillfully calmed the pilot to the survivor, deploying the rescue swimmer into the tumultuous seas. While the rescue swimmer was attempting to place the first survivor and the dog into the rescue basket, a massive wave crashed over them, causing the survivor, the basket, and the dog to become separated. As the pilot hovered without visual references, it was Petty Officer Sustachek's precise conning commands which stabilized the rescue basket and ensured a swift recovery of the survivor, the dog, and the rescue swimmer. Petty Officer Sustachek's expertise was again required to recover the last survivor and the rescue swimmer from the violent seas. He expertly delivered the basket to the rescue swimmer despite repeated battering by the enormous waves. Timing the approaching seas with perfection, Petty Officer Sustachek quickly lifted the survivor and rescue swimmer to safety aboard the rescue helicopter. Petty Officer Sustachek's actions and exceptional aeronautical skills were instrumental in the life-saving rescue of all on board the sailing vessel Irish Mist. His dedication, judgment, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended, in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Oh my gosh. Dude, just reading that, like, I remember everything that Shannon was talking about. Dude, 20-foot seas, and you've got to get a basket down, time it perfect. As a flight mech, as a guy that hoists now, I understand how difficult that is.
Yeah.
Tag, you're it, bro. Run us through it, dude.
Yeah. So that other case with Jerry was just a few months before this one. So this was probably my next big case. Like Shannon had mentioned, I was not on duty at the time. As either I was at home, just finished dinner, was cleaning the dishes, and the phone rings. And they said, "Hey, we need you to come in. The duty crew is out for a third time, and they're getting ready to get bagged out, and we've got this boat out there, and we need you to go get them." So I rolled in, and it was Shannon and Doug Watson was our pilot. Unfortunately, I can't remember who the co-pilot was, but Jerry writes about this in his book, and in this case, and he mentions that I was nervous, that I looked nervous in the book, and he was right. He's right. I don't know where he got that information from. He must talk to Shannon, but I was nervous because this was the first big case, with these types of seas and this type of wind. I've never experienced anything like this before. So we head out there. It's pretty bumpy on the way out, and we get on scene. And as we're looking at the boat, we're trying forever to get a hold of these folks on the radio, and we can't understand why they're not responding to us. We finally realize that their boat is down their radio is down in the cabin, and they're up on the deck looking at us, waiting for us to just send Shannon down. So initially, we put Shannon in the water to try to swim to the boat, but the boat just got away from him. So we went and we picked up Shannon, and that's when we decided to tell them to put the person in the water. Shannon talks about the fact that it was decided early on that we were not going to deal with the dog. So we told the individuals, we're not taking the dog. It's just you and your wife. That's it. But the guy ends up jumping in with the dog. So that kind of changed things up a bit. I put Shannon down in the water. He swims over to them. I get the basket ready, start to put the basket out. And as soon as I put the basket out, it's blowing backwards. So that's when I realized that, again, if you're not training in these types of environments, you've got to think at this, at the moment, you got to figure out like how to do this. So I would put the basket out a couple times. I would put it out and it would just fly back. And I was starting to get concerned because I got two people in the water right now. I got my swimmer and I got a survivor in the water. And so I suddenly realized, okay, I need to con the pilot forward so I can get this basket out, because the further I pay it out, the further back it goes. So eventually that's what happens. So I finally get the basket to him. Shannon puts the guy and the dog in the basket, and he gives me the ready for pickup signal. And as soon as I start to bring up the basket, the wave comes and knocks him out of his hand. And the guy and the dog go flying out of the basket. And I see this stuff, like, because we have the hoist light facing straight down underneath the helo. And I see all this stuff like fluttering in the air. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, it was just like a quick glimpse of something flying in the air. I didn't think much of it at the time. Shannon swims back to the guy. I get the basket down to him. He gets the guy in the basket. I bring him up. At this point, he's swimming to the dog, even though we had talked about leaving the dog. He's swimming to the dog. So I'm like, all right, I guess we're getting the dog. And I put the basket down. He puts the dog in the basket. And you probably know this, that if there's not somebody in the basket with the dog, there's always a risk of the dog jumping out of the basket. So,
totally.
So I just two-blocked it up as quickly as I possibly could. I didn't want to risk the dog jumping out. I got the dog in the basket into the cabin. The dog was so scared that its claws were like around the netting in the bottom of the basket, and I couldn't get the dog out. I had to ask the guy to help me pull the dog out of the basket. So he helps me pull the dog out. Yeah. And then I pick up Shannon. It was a quick pickup for Shannon, no big deal. And then the second individual went super smooth. Put Shannon in the water. The woman jumps in the water. I put Shannon in the water. He swims over to her. I get the basket to them fairly quickly. At that point, I'd learned, I kind of caught on to what the situation was and what I needed to do ahead of time. So got the basket down, picked them up, and then we headed back. Now, these folks were not from America. I believe, if I remember right, they were from Australia. And so when we got back to base, Customs was there waiting for them because they had to go through Customs, and come to find out that all of that stuff that I saw fluttering when the wave hit the basket, the guy had a backpack on, and when they got nailed, the backpack flew open and they had all their money and passports in the backpack. So they lost it all.
Oh
yeah.
No.
Yeah. So I don't know what happens then. I mean, this was before 9/11. So, back then I don't know what Customs does with foreigners that don't have their passports with them. But, I felt really bad. I was like, wow, this is horrible. But yeah, it was crazy. That was a crazy night. I got a call the next morning saying that the news was there and they wanted to interview us. And I'm not the type of person to get up in front of the news and to talk about that stuff. And I was like, what's Shannon doing? Is he going? They're like, yeah, Shannon's going to go. And I'm like, let Shannon do it. I'm good. Just let him take care of it. Which is probably, we always like to say that that's probably why some of the air crew gets the air medal and some of them don't get the air medal, is they were the ones willing to get up in front of the news and talk about, they got the extra limelight. Well, whatever. So
whatever.
It was exciting, dude. That is my all-time favorite. I mean, my most exciting case. That was my hardest case. Thankfully, I got it early on in my career, so that anything after that was a piece of cake compared to that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I spent 7 years up in Alaska off and on, and I never had a case like that up there compared to what I had there in Elizabeth City.
Man,
so, yeah.
Dude, good for you. That's awesome. Yeah. As a hoist operator now, I get it. I really do. And I have never hoisted a 20-foot seas. So let me disclaimer on that one. But I understand the difficulty to get the basket down. I have dealt with the winds like that, where all of a sudden the basket's kicking out. Now I was in the 139, so it actually would kick out and forward when it would hit the rotowash. But when you have a killer wind coming, it kicks it way back, and you actually have to con the pilot further than they think. And then sometimes you'll be like, man, I'm right over the top. Yeah, but yeah, I know, but I need you to go another 20 forward because the basket's way by the tail, bro. Help a brother out.
Yeah.
But and then the timing of the 20-foot waves to be precision on that hoist pendant, bro, that's awesome. Gosh.
Yeah.
Freaking dog.
Yeah.
Love him.
Yeah.
Please don't jump out of the basket. Please don't jump out of the basket.
That was my biggest concern at that point, and when you interviewed Shannon a year ago, he said that the dog was exhausted. You said that when he grabbed onto the dog, because the dog was going crazy, but as soon as he grabbed onto that dog just went limp. And, and so when he threw it in the basket, I think the dog was just exhausted and scared. It was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's freaking awesome. Dude, thank you so much for sharing that, man. I love getting everybody's perspective, and I so appreciate that. Again, good job to you and the entire crew. It's hilarious. I love it. All right, my friend. Well, let's keep going. Actually, no, we're not going to go too much we're not going out of East City quite yet, because you did something else at East City, which is
yeah.
I have to bring this up because it's pretty funny and pretty cool. So you got a letter from the command, and you know what? I'll just read it, and then you can get into it.
Okay.
Dear Petty Officer Sustachek, please accept my sincere thanks for assistance that you provided the Pasquotank County Sheriff's Office in their apprehension of a larceny suspect. It's the dedication and professionalism displayed by you that allows us to enjoy the outstanding reputation we have developed with the various agencies we conduct business with. Once again, my appreciation for your professionalism, hard work, and a job well done. And that's Captain Ansley of the Air Station. He's the Air Station commanding officer. So, apprehension of a larceny suspect. What?
Yeah. So we got a call. I was on duty at the time, and we got a call. It was during the day that there was an individual who had stolen a car from Virginia, and he then stopped off at a convenience store in Elizabeth City and stole a case of beer. And as he was leaving the convenience store, a cop saw him and turned around and started chasing him. And they chased him into a farm, some farmland, and he got the car stuck and jumped out and took off running. And they had gone searching for him, and they had spent like the last 2 hours looking for him. They couldn't find him anywhere. So they asked for us to launch a helicopter. And so one of their law enforcement officers came on board with us. He had a radio with him. We got up in the air, and it wasn't that far from. It was just south of the air station, probably like 5-10 minute flight south of the air station. It wasn't that far. So and it was along the Pasquotank. It was some of the farmland right along the Pasquotank River right there. So we started looking. We were looking in the wooded areas, and we started looking closer to the shoreline. And we got close to the shoreline, and there was a refrigerator there, like an old refrigerator sitting in the shoreline. And I'm like, I don't think this guy would be dumb enough to hide in a refrigerator, but we better check it anyways, right? So I tell the law enforcement officer in the helicopter, hey, there's a refrigerator down there. You might want to call your guys to it. He calls the guys. You see them all swarm, guns drawn. They swarm to the refrigerator. They open up the door, and he's not in there. So like, all right, we got to keep looking. So we're getting closer and closer to the water, and there's like this, I guess it's called sawgrass there that runs right along the riverbed, and it's like 10 feet tall. It's super high. And right in the middle of this field of sawgrass is a big dead tree. And the closer we get to that dead tree, we're hovering over the sawgrass to blow it down to try to see if we can see anything in there. The closer we get to this dead tree, limbs are starting to like fly off, which, as you know, is not good for the helicopter if it gets up in the rotor or whatever. So I'm constantly looking up at the tree, and I'm looking down, and I'm looking up, and I'm looking down. And about the third or fourth time I look down, I see something, and I'm like, I think I got him. And I actually have like an old VHS tape of the helo cam, the cable where the cable comes out. I think I have an old VHS recording of this, but you can see my arm, you can see my head and my arm sticking out like I'm pointing at him. And I remember screaming in the ICS, I got him, he's right there. And the law enforcement officer like peeks out and he sees him. And so then he's telling the guys on the ground that we found him. The guy's in a fetal position on the ground. And all of these law enforcement officers are like working their way towards this guy. And they keep looking up at us, and we're pointing, he's right there. And they keep looking up, and finally they get a hold of him. They find him, and they handcuff him and they pull him out. We go ahead and we fly around, and we go back and land in the field. And where we landed, they had already brought the guy out, and he was handcuffed, and he was sitting on the ground up against the bumper of one of the cop cars. And so as we landed, I had like a perfect line of sight with him. We dropped the law enforcement officer gets out of the helicopter, and as we take off, I look at the guy and I was like, "See you later, buddy." As we take off, like, I got you.
Don't be breaking the law out there, man. We're coming to get you.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. There was, I don't know if you remember the prison that's there in Pasquotank County. It's on the road, on the main highway headed up towards Virginia.
Yeah, off 17, right?
I think so, yeah. We had the opportunity. It was right before this happened, actually, which I think is what solidified that bond with local law enforcement. was they were having a what's the name of the person that runs the prisons? The warden.
The warden?
They were having a warden's conference at that prison, and they invited the Coast Guard to come to kind of demonstrate what we could do for them in the event that they had a jailbreak. So we flew the helicopter there and landed, and then we actually had lunch with them in the prison, which was scary. That was walking in there and having all those doors closed behind you, and then eating right across the hall from where all of the convicts were eating. It was pretty scary. And then wondering who cooked our food. Did the convicts cook all the food for this warden conference? And then you wonder what's in the food, that kind of thing. So it was all right. And then we gave a presentation. We gave a presentation of what our capabilities were. And then they followed us out to the helicopter, and we actually did like a short demo of like hoisting and, like flight pattern out in the fields near there and everything like that. So again, I think that kind of helped to solidify that relationship with them. And that might have been why they called us at that point. So,
man, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of random too. Like I don't think I've ever read in all the episodes I've recorded. I don't think I've ever read anything quite like that. So,
yeah, that's what I loved about the job, man. There were so many different things that we could be asked to do.
Yeah. And you always think it on the fly because nothing is ever the same. Like when you take off and you're going out to whatever it is, it's different than the last time for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh, the other thing is we had to sit on on bulletproof vests because they didn't know if this guy was armed or not. So they had us sit on bulletproof vests so that in case the guy was like shooting at the helicopter or something. Yeah. I don't know. It was weird.
Oh my God. Oh, that's so fun. Oh, that's great, dude. That's hilarious. Okay, from here, let's take you up to Kodiak, Alaska. So you went up to Kodiak.
Yeah, so I actually had a quick break in service. So
nice.
Yeah, from Elizabeth City. I was married at the time. Things didn't work out in the end, but we weren't very happy with Elizabeth City. We wanted to be back home in San Diego. So I got out of the Coast Guard, but I stayed Aviation Reserves, which was back then was not utilized very much. And moved back to San Diego. I was a reservist, an aviation reservist in San Diego. They were telling me that aviation reserves was going away, so I had to find another rate to go if I wanted to stay reserves. But then 6 months in, 9/11 hit. 6 months after I got out, I worked for an aviation company at the time. The aviation industry took a dump because it was because the planes were what were used and all that kind of stuff. So the company I worked for laid off 85 people. Luckily, I was not one of those people, but they moved me to a different department, like a sales rep department. I was not happy at all. I saw the Coast Guard ramping back up again, and I was like, I want to be back in again. So I went to the recruiter, the same recruiting office that I came in the first time, and I said, I want to come back in active duty. And they were like, we don't know how to help you. We've never had an aviation reservist come here, want to come back in the Coast Guard before. So I actually, I got myself requalified with a flight physical. I called the detailer myself. I told him who I was, what my experience was, that kind of thing. And I said, I don't care where you send me. As long as I stay 60s, I don't care where you send me. So he came back to me like 2 weeks later and said, I have one slot in Kodiak, Alaska. So I said, I'll take it. Sounds great. So yeah, so that's where I went next, was Kodiak. And that's where you and I saw each other again.
Again. Yeah. This time it was on the back end of my trip because I was there from 2000 to 2003. So
correct. Yep.
Yeah. So what you had a couple things like that stood out to you while you were up there, because you got called out on two specifically that really stood out to you.
Yeah, so I had a couple different cases there, but yeah, the two that stood out to me the most were the first one actually really, like, I'd been stationed in Sitka before, but this next case really showed me the resiliency of the people of Alaska, like how well prepared people are, that especially people that have lived there their entire lives. So we got called out on a overdue plane or missing plane. Supposedly it was a small Cessna had taken off from a small airport. I can't remember the area, but they had taken off from the small airport, and right after they took off, they called Mayday. They told the air traffic that they were coming back around. They were going to land, but they never made it back. So we went looking for them, and when we arrived, the plane was on a beach upside down, and the couple, the couple that they were probably in like their 60s or 70s. They had already had their tent up. It was at dusk. They already had their tent up, and they already had a fire going. So they were prepared. Like they were prepared to stay.
What?
They knew that. Yeah. So we. I don't even think there was enough room on that beach for us to land. So I think I just hoisted down the swimmer, and he walked over there, and they were both a little banged up and bruised, but there were no like broken bones, nothing like that. So it was, but that taught me the resiliency of the people of Alaska, how, everything you see on TV about the people living off in the woods on their own. Yeah, they're totally like that. So,
that's kind of badass, but you really like, if you break that down, you get called out, hey, there's an overdue plane, and then you go find it upside down. And when you show up, there's a tent up and a fire. I'm sure they had fish cooking. We just caught a king salmon. Yeah. Come back in like an hour, and then after we eat.
Right. Yeah.
That would not surprise me. Like,
yeah, they were surprised to see us. I think they were surprised to see us as quickly as we got there, I think. So They were prepared to stay the night for sure.
Freaking awesome.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. The other case that comes to mind is we got a call on a missing 5-year-old boy. It's one of the small fishing villages just north of Kodiak. It's on the same island, but it's just north of Kodiak. Supposedly it was a native family, so different culture, different way of doing things. The boy was 5 years old. He would go out and play on his own out in the woods. I mean, this fishing village was not like rows of houses. They were like houses separated by hundreds of yards kind of thing. So this boy would go out and play on his own. And when it was time for him to come home, the parents would send the dog out to go get the kid, and the dog would know, or the kid would know, just to follow the dog home. It was just that was the way things were, I guess. So,
okay.
The child was missing, and when the mom sent the dog out to go get the child, the dog kept running to the edge of this cliff. It was about a 10-foot cliff at the water's edge. The house sat on a hill that kind of had a beach that ran down behind it to the water, and then the beach was kind of like horseshoed with cliffs on either side, like 10-foot cliffs on either side. So when the dog went out, it would run to the edge of the cliff and back and forth. And so the mom went out there to look. She couldn't find him anywhere. So state troopers showed up. They started looking for him. They couldn't find him. So they called us, and we flew out. We flew up and down for probably 45 minutes. Couldn't find him anywhere. And then as we were coming back over the beach behind their house, the state trooper was on the ground talking to the mom, and he looks up at us and he points behind him, and we look behind him, and there's the boy's body on the ground on the beach, like right at the water line. And the reason why we never saw him, the reason why we never saw him was because Black Sand Beach, from the volcanic activity there over the years, the child was wearing black fleece pants and like a black and gray camo fleece jacket. So we never saw him because he just blended in. So we immediately landed, and the swimmer and I think it was Darren Reeves, I think was the swimmer. We ran out, and at that point, the mom had seen the child and was hysterical, and the trooper was trying to hold her as Darren and I ran down to grab the child. And we all got back into the helicopter and proceeded to try to resuscitate the child. I think the hardest part for me was the child was in my lap the whole time. So I was giving compressions while Darren was giving the mouth to mouth, but it was hard. It was really hard. I didn't, that was my first experience like that. We got back to base, ambulance came, took them. We immediately were approached by command and was like, do you guys need to talk to somebody? That kind of thing. I think they called it SISM training back then. I can't remember what they called it, but yeah. So you need to talk to somebody. I'm like, no, I'm good. But then I got home that night and I just broke down, man. I mean, it was like, I have kids now. I didn't have kids back then, but I would think about like my niece at the time, who was about the same age at the time. So yeah, man, it was emotionally very hard for me. But if I had any recommendations for other folks that have to deal with that kind of stuff, if the offer there is there to talk to somebody, it's best to talk to somebody, to get it all out when you can, rather than just stuffing it and thinking that you can deal with it on your own. So, yeah.
Wow, that's a tough case. I'm sorry, Adam. I really am. I appreciate you sharing that too. Yeah. I want to throw one more thing out there, and this is for everybody. Like sometimes, and this was for me as well, it doesn't hit us right away. So you saying no, nah, I'm good. You probably were good at that moment in time. Like I feel like that for me too. Like it was one of those things where, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And then you get home and you're just like, I'm not good. And now you don't know what to do because you just said, nah, I'm good, but now you're not.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to go back and say, you know what? I'm not good right now. And it's okay. Right. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Thank you for sharing that, man. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, dude, man, we're not even like halfway through your career right now, and you've got some stuff, man. Holy cow. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Collins Aerospace Goodrich. Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Collins Aerospace's Goodrich hoists stay ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety.
Let's bring you on to another one. So you leave Kodiak and you go back to San Diego.
San Diego again. Yep.
And down in San Diego, let's see, I got to bring this one up. So in 2005, so you earned yourself an achievement medal. Let me read this because this is, again, I've had a bunch of guys on here that were down at Katrina, and it was a whirlwind craziness that was down there. And I've loved everybody's perspective of it. So I'm excited to hear yours. But let me start with the award. Citation to accompany the award of the Coast Guard Achievement Medal to Adam D. Sustachek, Aviation Maintenance Technician, 2nd Class, United States Coast Guard. Adam Sustachek is cited for superior performance while deployed to Alexandria, Louisiana in response to Hurricane Katrina from 3 September to 10 September 2005. Demonstrating expert ability, Adam Sustachek successfully prepared the first San Diego H-60 helicopter to make the 1,300-mile journey to hurricane-devastated New Orleans. He maintained a consistent radio guard on the grueling 9.9-hour flight and ensured aircraft readiness during multiple stops throughout the night. Adam Sustachek provided invaluable maintenance expertise while keeping the 2 Jayhawks airborne with minimal tools and no facilities or support. Exhibiting unending motivation and stamina, he routinely worked 12 to 14-hour days to ensure both aircraft were top shape for each sortie and remained in continuous ready status throughout the intense 8-day deployment. Adam Sustachek carefully searched for survivors amid the devastation in New Orleans. During a demanding rescue, he flawlessly executed hoists between 2 4-story complexes skillfully keeping the aircraft clear from debris, telephone wires, and trees. He personally assisted and cared for 2 stranded elderly survivors who were previously believed deceased, guiding them past dangerous low-flying helicopter operations at Sector New Orleans and reuniting them with the family. Adam Sustachek's diligence, perseverance, and devotion to duty are most heartily commending, in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Dude, Adam, God, I love this stuff so much. I really do. So so Hurricane Katrina, we all know it just crushed New Orleans and the whole Gulf of Mexico area. And everybody in the Coast Guard was called. Like, they were like, bring every asset you can. You being in San Diego, you guys are now called two helicopters from San Diego?
Correct. Yeah. So
there's only 3 there, 4 there? There's 4 helicopters?
3.
3. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Dude, talk about taking the assets. Jeez. Yeah. Okay. Run us through it, man.
So
what happened?
Yeah. So Hurricane Katrina happened on Sunday. I think it was the 30th, of August. And we immediately sent a bunch of mechs and swimmers to Mobile to support. And then it wasn't until the following Saturday, I was on duty at the time. It came out over the loudspeaker, now launched already helo for Hurricane Katrina support. And I was like, wait, what? What is happening right now? So wait a minute, hold on.
That's you gotta think about that. Like, and for everybody that's not in America, you gotta, like, you're on the opposite side of the country. Launched already aircraft for Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. What?
Yeah. Yes. So we had like a I think it was like an hour and a half, 2-hour window to basically, I had to call my wife and say, actually, she was my fiance at the time. We were getting married in 2 months. We were getting married in 2 months. So I had to call her and say, hey, I need you to pack a bag for me and bring it to me. I'm going to Hurricane Katrina. I don't know how long I'm going to be gone. Don't worry, I'll be back before the wedding. So she packs me a bag and brings it to the base. And we basically take off, and it's basically my duty crew from duty that day, which was, unfortunately, I can't remember the co-pilot, but the pilot was Youngberg, was my pilot, and then Josh Miramontes was our swimmer. So Montez and I have done a lot of stuff together over the years, and we're still friends.
Love Josh.
So
yeah.
So we took off, and as the award stated, 9.9 hours. So I'm sorry, Josh was not on the flight with me. It was just me in the back. So Josh flew out later on and met us in Houston the following day. So basically, as you probably know, you get bagged out on what is it, 5 hours, 6 hours, your bag?
6 hours your bag.
Right.
If you can land. If you can land at 5.9.
Correct. And that's exactly what we did. So we landed at like 3 and refueled. We landed at 5.9 and refueled, and then we just huffed it all the way there. So by the time we arrived, it was like after midnight, I think, when we finally arrived. Woke up it was in Houston. So we woke up the next morning. The other helo was there. They had sent another helo right after us. That one had landed. And then we had 4 crew and 2 helos. So we were doing back to back each day while in New Orleans. So we landed in New Orleans. We landed in Houston, and the 2 crew, so my crew and the other crew that flew out the night before, then jumped in a C-130, flew to Alexandria, Louisiana, and the other 2 crew flew the helos to Alexandria, Louisiana. Now, the reason we went there instead of Mobile was because there were additional jobs that they were asking us to do. We were flying dignitaries around. We did do some search and rescue, as was stated. Getting on scene the day after was surreal. And I think I sent you some pictures that you might be able to show later, but
actually they'll be up on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Like of the devastation and the roads like just flooded, and it's crazy.
Yeah. I think there's a picture of the school bus yard too, which if anybody remembers, they were supposed to utilize the school buses to get everybody out of the city, but the school buses are still sitting in the yard, in the fenced in yard. So that was crazy. So yeah, that first time showing up on scene was I'd never seen anything like it before. We saw, like, when we were hovering over the buildings, we saw a dog out on a balcony, and we thought, if there's a dog, there's probably people. So we hoisted Josh down to that 4-story building, the balcony on the 4th story. He walks in and he radios back up and says, "There's nobody else here. They left their dog." So we sent down some MREs, because we were all living off MREs pretty much the whole time. So we sent down some MREs, and he cut them open for the dog and left them for the dog. The dog didn't want to have anything to do with Josh. It stayed away from Josh the entire time. And then I forgot to mention that when we showed up in Alexandria, all the hotels were taken by all of the people that had basically gotten out of New Orleans. So there was a church nearby that had an attached school, and they had basically turned the school rooms, the classrooms, into sleeping quarters for us. So cool. The people at the church were amazing. They supplied us with cots and blankets and pillows. They washed our clothing for us, including our chonies, our underwear. They had free like deodorant and toothpaste and toothbrushes. They cooked us food. Like it was amazing what these people did for us. So it wasn't just our 4 crews that were staying there. It was boat crews, other helo crews from like the National Guard and folks like that. So they were amazing. Every day that we were there, first thing in the morning, Mobile would call our captain at Air Station San Diego, at Sector San Diego, and say, "I need your helicopters in Mobile." And every day the captain would call us. I think Youngberg was the one in charge at the time of all the crews. He would call Youngberg and say, "Hey, they're asking for you guys again." And Youngberg would ask us, "You guys want to go to Mobile, or you want to stay here?" And we knew that if we went to Mobile, we would get into the mix with everybody else, and our flight time would be diminished tremendously. So at this point, we were flying every other day, versus in Mobile, you'd probably fly maybe once a week, once every 3rd, 4th day, something like that. So we knew that if we stayed in Alexandria, that we would be able to fly a lot more and possibly help a lot more. But the downside to that was those aircraft couldn't break. We only had one box of tools. That's all we had. So if anything happened to those aircraft, then we were out of luck. We were in trouble. So we kept those birds flying that whole week nonstop. So we got a call from a boat crew that there was a man who they found, an older gentleman, probably in his 70s or 80s, in his house. Floodwaters had receded somewhat, but they had been in the first floor of his house, and now it was down to, like, I don't know, just below. And they basically, this guy had been through hurricanes and flooding before. He thought that this was just going to recede like every other flood, so he just waited it out. The story is that he would go and scoop up a pot full of that water, that flood water, and take it in, and he would basically boil it to use it to shave and stuff like that, which that water had a lot of stuff floating in it. It had oil and gas and feces and anything else you could think of was in that water. So that was crazy to me. So we landed in a parking lot and picked the gentleman up. There was another guy as well that they had found. We took them both. their families did think that they were gone because it was a week now and they hadn't heard from them, and cell phones weren't working. So, or they could get a hold of them through cell phones. We landed at the sector New Orleans, which is where they were having people get dropped off so that they could reunite them with their families. We landed on the very outskirts of the spit there, and as we're getting out of the helicopter, rotor's still turning. As we're getting out of the helicopter, I'm escorting these guys back to the building. The older gentleman pulls a cigarette out and starts to light his cigarette, and I'm like, and there's like helos flying around and coming and going, and I'm like, dude, no, you can't smoke right now. You got to wait. So he basically puts it out, and we finally get across the spit and over to the building. And we did find out later on that he reunited with his daughter. The older gentleman did. He reunited with his daughter, who thought he was gone. He had perished in the flood. And yeah, that was pretty cool to find that out for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. The other cool thing that we did there, which we couldn't talk about at the time, but we can now, was Lucent Technologies had a technology back then where they could link up to cell phone towers and get people's phone numbers. So we had installed, they got into our helicopter, and we did this for, I think, 2 days, where there were two guys that got into our helicopter. One guy had a laptop, and the other guy had a cell phone with the earpiece hooked up. And as we got into the air, the laptop would populate with cell phones pinging off the cell phone tower that were in the area. And the other guy would start to call the cell phones and be like, hey, this is the U.S. Coast Guard overhead. Do you need to be rescued? And again, 2 days, I think they came in contact with approximately 200 people in the area. Nobody wanted to be picked up. Everybody was like, no, I'm staying. So again, this was a week after the majority of other people had been rescued. We were thinking maybe people are stuck in their attics, that whole thing. But yeah, nothing. So it was a week. We stayed there a whole week. I think it was Friday or Saturday is when we ended. We got the okay to basically go home. So we started to fly back. We stopped off in Houston, and it was decided that 2 crews were going to take the helicopters back, and everybody else was going to fly home commercial. So the swimmers were immediately like, we're going home. We're stopping off in Vegas on the way. So Josh knew somebody that lived in Vegas, and they're like, we're going to visit my friend. So and then the other pilots were out, and I think two of the flight mechs were out as well. So it was me and Jay Wright were the 2 flight mechs, and then we had 4 pilots. Lieutenant Bell, I think he retired as a commander. Commander Bell was he was our engineering officer at the time in San Diego. He was kind of the one leading us on the way home. I remember Dave Marama was there as well. Lieutenant Marama, you probably remember him.
I do remember him very well.
Yeah, great stick. Anyway, so there were a few of us that decided to stay behind, and as soon as the other guys left, because we all met in a restaurant, as soon as the other guys left, Bell turns around and says, we're all going to San Antonio for the river walk on the way home to celebrate everything that we've done. So that next day we got up, we flew the helos to San Antonio, had a good time in San Antonio, went to a restaurant, went out to drinks, that kind of thing. And then the next day we flew home. So yeah. And again, it was like, at that point, I think it was like another 8 something hours to fly home or something like that. So it was pretty crazy. Yeah.
There are definitely some benefits about having your own helicopter. Even though it's the government's helicopter, it's kind of nice having our own helicopter. Hey, what do you guys want to do today? Oh, we're going to bounce out of San Antonio just for a hot minute. We're just going to divert.
Yeah. Of course, you had to get approval from the captain, from command,
yes.
And they approved it. So, yeah.
But it's just kind of cool. It's one of those things like you asked, they said yes, you take advantage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, we have some really good times at the Coast Guard, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Oh, Adam. Wow, man.
Yeah. That's why it's the best service,
That's awesome.
man.
I think so. But I haven't been in the other one, so I really can't speak for them. But
I haven't either. But how many coasties do you know have gone over to the other services? Compared to how many other people have come from other services to the Coast Guard?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know if I know anybody that went. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, so a couple guys that I know left the Coast Guard and went like Air Force PJ.
Yes. Yep.
But the reverse side of other services coming to the Coast Guard. Oh yeah, that's man. I get. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just saying, Adam.
I know. Point made.
Point made. And the jury says, done.
That's right.
Oh, man. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. The Real ResQ Store.com. Your shop for all your podcast-worthy gear. From comfortable shirts to cozy mugs, we've got everything to showcase your love for your favorite podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head to the realresqstore.com and let your gear do the talking. All right, Adam, I want to hit another one. I'm
Okay.
having a blast with you, by the way. This has been so much fun for me. So you got a letter of commendation, and this is what this says right here. Letter of commendation. I know with pride and am pleased to commend you of your performance of duty while serving as flight mechanic aboard 860-6010. In the midst of a Pacific winter storm, the Coast Guard helicopter was engaged in a rescue of 3 fishermen from the fishing vessel La Lancha Dulce, which was stranded on the rocks of Santa Barbara Island, 105 miles northwest of San Diego. As the Coast Guard helicopter battled heavy rain and turbulence, low visibility, and 30-knot winds, you worked diligently to prepare the aircraft cabin for rescue operations. During the initial pass of the hoisting area, you quickly assessed the situation and passed critical information to the crew for the upcoming hoist. You ensured the rescue swimmer was aware of the potential danger, and you timed the surging waves to safely deliver the rescue basket with precision to the jagged rocks. Throughout the evolution, you superbly completed 6 challenging hoists, during which you skillfully conned the pilot into position within close proximity of the island cliffs for the recovery of the survivors and the rescue swimmer, saving 3 lives. You are commended for your outstanding performance of duty. By your meritorious service, you've upheld the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Hell yeah. So, 3 survivors, boat on the rocks.
Yeah.
Dude, what happened?
So we got a call. I think we were out on a patrol, and we got a call that Air Station LA had a 65 already on scene, but they were running short on fuel, and where this boat had ran aground, there was a cliff on one side, and so the 65 couldn't get close enough because of the wind gusts coming off of the cliff side. So
they have the downdrafts. They would be pushing them down.
Yep.
Dang. Ooh,
So they
I talk a lot about that in training. Sorry.
Yes.
Keep going. I'm going to recap that. Let's go.
Okay. So they asked for our assistance, and so when we got on scene, they had stayed on scene till we got there, and then they took off. There was a lifeguard boat on scene as well. I think they came out from LA or Santa Barbara area. There was a lifeguard boat on scene further out, and one of the lifeguards had swam from the boat to the boat on the rocks. So there was a lifeguard on the boat with them. We did the brief. We decided it was John Lindborn was my swimmer. We decided to put Johnny down. He got in the water, and as soon as he stepped, because he was on the reef right next to the boat, and as soon as he stepped on the reef, like a wave came, and there were smaller waves hitting that area. It was like 3 feet or whatever, but there was kind of like a hole in the reef, and his foot stepped in the hole, and the wave took him down or whatever. but he came up okay. Everything was fine. He gave us a thumbs up, ready for pickup, and so we did. It was fairly quick. It was a super easy case compared to some of the other ones I'd done.
I love how you just said that was super easy.
It was. I mean, trust me. After the Elizabeth City stuff, this was cake. So put the basket down, brought each person in, brought John in, but then we still had the lifeguard on the boat. So I basically did like a half hoist of the lifeguard. So I put the hook down and the lifeguard hooked up, and basically brought him halfway up, and then we just hover taxied over by his boat and dropped him in the water, and then he swam in and jumped in his boat. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
John and I, actually the whole crew ended up getting the, I don't know if you ever heard of the Dedalian Award. It's like a Navy pilots organization, and every year they pick like the top rescue awards for the year that they think is the best rescue award in the area. So we ended up getting the Dedalian Award that year for that. So John and I went to an event for that with our families and stuff. It was
right
cool.
on. Hey, congratulations on that one too. Heck yeah. Dang, man. It was an easy rescue. That's so funny.
Again,
you know what's funny about that though? Yeah, but everything is like we have cases, rescues that are like gnarly. And then you have some of them that are like so benign, but they're so meaningful and they stand out to us so much.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I shouldn't use the word easy. I should use the word uneventful.
Okay. That's way better. Way better. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, we got to touch on that. The fact that the 65 is coming in and just didn't have the power because of the downdrafts off the mountain. So one of the things that I do with some of the training now that I get involved with is when we talk about that, like effects of winds or the wind effects to the aircraft, that's one of them we talk about, because I got to use this. I got to say this the right way. I don't want to, because I don't want to call people out for not doing the right job, but people tend to be like unaware of the dynamics of when you're away from a cliff and you're in a hover or you're just cruising around. What we try training to people is that the wind effects on the aircraft, based on how it goes in the direction and what it's hitting here or dropping down there, is you get out in an area where you're backed off and you're in clean air, which is great, but that clean air is different than when you get close to the cliff. So I can totally see it. Like the 65 has good clean air. They're holding good power, and then they roll up next to that cliff and get that downdraft, and they lose everything, or they're pulling max power. You have to get away. So it's one of the concerns. We constantly tell people in training classes, man, don't get into a hurry to get over there. Get in there nice and easy. Check the power of the aircraft and see what happens. And then if you can continue. So, man, wow. Like I'm going to give credit to the 65 crew for being like, man, this aircraft, it's not going to handle it. We're going to need help.
Yeah.
Getting you guys up there. So smart move on them.
It was. Yeah. Yep.
But because then I'll throw this out there for them too. It probably would have been pretty benign for them as well. But because of the dynamics based on the aircraft performance, they were not able to max out on that. So dang, man. That's cool, Adam. Man, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so I gotta touch on one more thing while you were in San Diego. 2006, man. 10 years later, and what did you get? Another enlisted person of the year. What? 10 years later. So in 1996, you earned it. And then in 2006, I'm just going to read the first line. Congratulations on your selection as Coast Guard Sector San Diego Enlisted Person of the Year for 2006. Your efforts have contributed significantly to Sector San Diego's ability to meet its assigned missions. Well done, sir.
Yeah, that one was for we had a couple aircraft go back to the repair and supply center pretty corroded. Not they were not being well taken care of, and so we finally realized that we needed to do something about it. So I don't remember if I was asked or I volunteered, but we needed to start a corrosion team. So being a prior AM, the airframes are my life. I loved working on airframes and making stuff and taking care of that. So I basically built out a program. We stood up a grave shift. We didn't have a grave shift up until that point, so we stood up a grave shift, which I led. And I had some great guys on the grave shift with me. Some guys I'm still friends with today. And yeah, man, we just nailed it. We just knocked it out of the park. So it worked out really well. We were able to make our own hours. Like, obviously it had to be the whole grave, but we were like, all right, well, we're going to do, I think it was like Sunday night through Thursday night or something like, I can't remember what it was, but it worked out in our favor. And it was one of those things where, like on a Friday night, we didn't have to stay the whole shift. Like we could if we got done early enough, we could get out of there because it's, I didn't have to do a brief on a Saturday morning or something like that. But it worked out really well. And it obviously it worked to the point where when the ALC guys, I mean the ARSC, they still call it ARSC?
Yep.
The Repair and Supply Center guys, when they came out to do a review, they said that was one of the cleanest aircraft that they'd ever seen. So,
wow.
Yeah, to go from the worst to the best, that's why I ended up getting that award, was because of that. So,
well, man,
yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know what graveyard shift are, it's it starts at midnight and then goes to 8 o'clock in the morning, something like that.
Yeah, or 11 to 7,
10?
11 to 7, or midnight to 8, something like that. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's the shift that nobody really wants because you're.
Yeah, the only time I did grave shift in Kodiak and I did grave shift in San Diego, both before we had kids. After kids, there was no way. There was no way I could do grave shift. Yeah. I like my sleep too much.
Man. Right? Hey, good for you. Good for you, man. All right, Adam. I've got one more award here I'd like to touch on, which is again pretty cool, and then we're gonna go from there. But is that cool?
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's go. Citation to accompany the award of the Coast Guard Achievement Medal, Gold Star Louvre Second, to Adam D. Sustachek, Aviation Maintenance Technician, First Class, United States Coast Guard. Petty Officer Sustachek decided for superior performance of duty while serving as flight mechanic aboard helicopter 6040 on June 19th, 2008. Dispatched from Sector San Diego, the Coast Guard helicopter responded to the motor vessel Grander's distress call for help as the 38-foot vessel crashed into the distant and rocky shore of San Clemente Island. A Good Samaritan vessel on scene had relayed that the people were in the water, but was unable to render assistance due to the treacherous location of the wrecked vessel. As the pilot inched along the shoreline, Petty Officer Sustachek provided vital conning and rotor clearance advisories to ensure the helicopter was safely maneuvered along the sheer cliff faces of the outcroppings. Once on scene with the survivors, conditions of extremely low visibility were encountered. Undaunted, he calmly and deftly conned the helicopter into position below the rock pinnacles with visibility altering between 100 to 200 feet, enabling the rescue swimmer to reach the survivors trapped on the rocky shoreline. As twilight faded, Petty Officer Sustachek lowered the rescue swimmer from the Coast Guard helicopter while the helicopter hovered precariously close to the jagged shoreline. He used the same skill and teamwork to successfully conduct 5 basket hoists, recovering 5 survivors who otherwise had no possibility of rescue that night, forestalling further injury from exposure caused by a night spent in the desolate, wind-swept shore, and likely saved 5 lives. Pastor Sustachek's diligence, perseverance, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Adam, man, dude, way to freaking crush that one. Jeez.
Yeah, I love how you say the very end of those with such fervor. I love it.
Well, I get excited about it, so I want to end it on
I
a high note.
Yeah, yeah. So that one, we were actually, I remember that one pretty clear. We were waiting at the air station because it was super foggy out, and we were supposed to do a training flight. And so we finally got like a clear patch, and we took off, and we started doing boat hoist training. I was the instructor in the we were doing boat hoist training for one of our trainees when we got diverted to go to this case. And on the way there, it was super foggy on the way there. And as we got close to the island, there were concerns on board that we were even going to be able to do it because we couldn't even see the island. We could barely see it. And it was just getting near dusk at this point. So we kind of reassured each other that we could make this work, that we just all had to have our heads on a swivel to make sure that we didn't get too close to the shoreline. San Clemente Island is inhabited by the Navy. It's a training facility. Part of the island is utilized for munitions training, things like that. So that though they're the only ones that are on the island. Where these guys had ran aground on the back side of the island, west side, there was no trails or no roads down there. So they couldn't get down there. When we pulled up into a hover near the island, we saw, the World War II movies where it's super smoky or foggy and you see the flares fly up into the air to try to see.
Yeah.
That's what it was like. It was super foggy. And all of a sudden you see these two pink flares fly up into the air in the fog on the other side of the bank. And it was eerie. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. It was like in a movie. So then we knew, okay, that's where they are. They're over on that side. So we hover taxied around that part of the island to get over there. The guys had made it to shore. And so we did the briefing. I think Dave Paquin was the rescue swimmer for that one. And I hoisted Dave down to the rocky outcrop, and he started to walk, and all of a sudden he stops and he bends over and he pulls something off of his sock, and I see him doing this. And I'm like, what is he doing?
Like shaking it off?
Yeah, like this. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? And it was weird, and he did it again. And I was like, this is weird. He goes up to the first guy, gets the guy into the I put the basket down, gets the guy into the basket. I bring him in. I do this a few more times. I notice when the guys are coming up, they're barefoot. They have no socks, no shoes on. Basically, these guys were in beds, or getting ready to go to sleep when their boat, the anchor, came loose, and they came to the boat basically moved up to shore. They didn't even realize it till they actually hit the rocks.
Oh,
so.
Wow.
So it damaged the boat enough where it was starting to sink and they had to get off as quickly as possible. So they didn't have any shoes or socks on. And when I started to pull them in, I noticed it was dark in the cabin, but I noticed these little like black balls on their legs and down by their feet. So I get them all in, and then I get Dave, I pull him in, and then we get the flashlights. Come to find out, they're these little mini cacti, and they have these tiny little needles. And so when I put Dave down, he had his rubber booties on, those booties that you guys wear with the rubber soles on them. And immediately those things were sticking to his booties. And so then he and I were like trying to pull them off of the guys because they were stuck to the guys' legs. And we're trying to pull them off the guys, and they're like sticking to our gloves. So I had to pull out my Leatherman and use it like a pliers to pull off these things. By the time we got back to shore, it was, I think it was like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and it was so foggy we couldn't land at the air station. We had to land at the San Diego International Airport across the way. And back in the day when we had the Falcon jets would be towed across the main street to to the airport for takeoff. So we still had that gate system set up. It just hadn't been used in a long time. So when we landed at San Diego International, we had to shut down, and then we had to coordinate with their security and their leadership to basically get the gate open. And then we had to, luckily there was a light there, so we could turn the light to red. And then we had to have the tractor go over and hook us up and basically pull us back across the busy street, back over to the air station. But
That's awesome.
yeah, that was
I love that.
yeah, that was a good one. We still found those cacti, like after the guys were out of there, we were cleaning the cabin up, there were still cacti laying around. And because they biohazard too, because those guys were bleeding from being barefoot on the reef, and then in that area, they were all bleeding. So we had to do a whole biohazard clean on the cabin after that too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Let me back up to just you getting there on scene. So once everybody's down, and the hoist itself pretty benign, even though you got a little bit of wind and low visibility.
Yeah, it was on like it was like a slight slant, but it was we were hovering only like 15 feet above the deck. There was a jagged cropping, but it kind of like was an out crop. Okay. So it kind of went like this, and then it went straight up. So we were out far enough to the edge where we hovered like 15 feet above the edge, where they could just walk right over and jump in the basket. So. Oh,
nice. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So pretty benign, like easy hoist, nothing crazy, nothing, just send it down, bring it up, and then get them in.
Yeah.
Uneventful.
Yeah.
Uneventful.
That's right.
Oh, that's good stuff. Man, that's awesome. Adam, that's badass, man. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Switlik. No mission is the same. Why should your suit be? Introducing a new custom dry suit experience. Choose your fabric, colors, neck and wrist seals, zippers, pockets, collars, and so much more. Intelligent measuring prompts ensure the most tailored fit. Brought to you by Switlik Survival Products. For more information, visit us at www.switlik.com.
Bro, you have run us some like amazing cases and just some incredible rescues throughout your entire career. Thank you so much for sharing all this with me. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
If you've got any other stories you want to share, now's the time. Other than that, I'm gonna close out with one more question.
No, I had a couple other air stations after that. I went to Air Station Sitka after that. Did a couple years there.
Oh yeah, that's
right. And then nothing, like no major cases for me there. And then my last tour was, I should say, in Sitka. We lost the 6017. If anybody, back in 2010. A lot of our families, a lot of our spouses were very concerned with us flying at that time. And honestly, I was burned out operationally at that point. So I put in for recruiting, which I got picked up for. And so I got to do my last 4 years at the San Diego recruiting office, the same recruiting office that I came in under. So it was kind of like a full circle ending to my career, which was pretty awesome. My first year was as a recruiter, and then I made chief. And so I was able to do my last 3 years as a recruiter in charge there. So awesome opportunity. I actually think that role for preparing me for life after the Coast Guard, work after the Coast Guard, due to the fact that the generations are different than they were back in the day when we were in, and being a recruiter, I had to learn what drives the younger generations and what their interests are and what their concerns are. And so being able to learn that while I was in the Coast Guard my last 4 years, when I transferred into my job now, which I work for a large tech company as a physical security manager, I better understood, when people come to us as security and they have these concerns or these complaints or these issues, I can relate to them better because in the tech industry, the average age is in the 30s, and I'm going to be 53 this year. So I'm old school, old school military Coast Guard. So, yeah, it helped me a lot. And so I wanted to get, that was kind of like me giving back to the Coast Guard by bringing more people in, and the Coast Guard kind of helping me out at the end there. So it was awesome.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Do you want to touch any more on the 6017 at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was an unfortunate situation. I was one of the last people to talk to that crew in Sitka prior to the accident. It was an aircraft swap. They were basically taking one of our old helicopters down to Astoria and swapping it for a new one that came up from Elizabeth City from the Repair and Supply Center. And I had watch captain the morning that they took off, and I basically was the one on the radio that said, "Hey, have a safe flight," that kind of thing. They got down to Astoria, okay. Spent a day down there, did the swap, and it was on the way back to Sitka that they hit a power line and basically took the helo right out of the sky. We lost 3 guys that we, if you've ever, the H-60 community is small to begin with.
Right.
Air stations like Sitka, even smaller. We all hang out together. We all fish together. We all hunt together, that kind of thing. So, we lost guys that we work with on a daily basis and we hang out with. And so it was another one of those situations where in the moment, I like to call it, like you're in go mode. That's what I call it, go mode. It's like when something like that happens, you put your emotions aside and you just do what you have to do to take care of the situation. And when this first happened, we got word of it. That's exactly what we did. And that lasted for about 2 days. We were just so busy making sure that documents were accounted for and records were printed out and, the families were taken care of and things like that. And it was after that the emotions set in, it was really hard.
Yeah.
We did mandatory group SISM training, which was difficult as well. I was the assistant chair or the co-chair for the that's what I'm looking for. I've been out so long now I can't even remember the name of it. The standardization team, the local standardization.
Okay. Yeah.
The local standardization team. So I was the co-chair for the enlisted side.
FEB,
our chairman was
FEB, right? FEB?
The Flight Examining Board. Right, exactly.
Hey, all right, okay.
Our chairman at the time was receiving Enlisted Person of the Year for the Coast Guard, so he wasn't around at that time. And so right after the incident happened, we ceased all flights for approximately 2 weeks. Kodiak flew crews down to stand by for us. One of my good friends, Travis Marsh, was one of the guys that came in, and as soon as he got off the plane, I just gave him a big hug and broke down. It was a big deal. So after the 2 weeks were up, we did I should go back and say that we did a full ceremony on base. Several of the guys flew up to be a part of Brett Banks's ceremony. Several of us flew down to Washington to do Adam Hoke's ceremony down there, the burial and that kind of thing. But after the 2 weeks were up, we had to get back in the air. We had to fly. Troy Breivik was our chairman. He wasn't around because he was receiving the award. So the command looked to me to basically sit everybody down and say, "Hey, listen, we have to fly again. And if you don't feel comfortable flying, that's completely okay. It's fine. You don't, we completely understand." Of the 18 or 20 people, there were only 2 that were "I'm not ready yet," which is fine. But being the co-chair, I felt like it was my responsibility to be that first person back in the seat in the back, So I took that first flight out just to show them it's okay. My
Nice.
wife was freaked out after that. Anytime I went flying, I had to let her know. Anytime that we stopped for fuel somewhere, I had to call her and let her know. So again, that was part of the reason why I felt like it was time for me to, depart ops and flying and things like that. So, yeah.
Right on. Well, I again appreciate you sharing that, because so I actually was getting out right around that time. So any connection that I had with any of those guys was nil. So
Yeah,
appreciate you sharing
that was kind of like the final straw, right? It was that one, and then the other helo that crashed up in the mountains up in Utah. Those were the last two. But we had I think it was 5 accidents in like a 2.5 year period. And Pap was the admiral at the time, and he was like, "That's it. I don't know what you guys are doing, but you need to reevaluate your standards and figure out what you're doing." And so there's a lot that changed after that. And a lot of it had to do with complacency, a lot of it had to do with, we were just comfortable. And that's the thing about flying, is you should never be fully comfortable.
No. Right. So, keep your head on a swivel at all times.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I remember sitting down with Pat Estrada for a while, and I love PE. And one of the things that he would always do is he would sit down every time he would come on duty. He would sit in the aircraft, and he would go through his egress stuff. And I always looked at that like, man, respect, man. That's awesome. Like, he'd been doing this for 20 years, but he was even more than that. And he would sit down and go through his egress procedure. And then I think it was Pat Barber that I had with me, and he would always go through the what if. Like, while you're flying, what if we lose an engine right now? What am I doing? How am I getting out? Where are my exit points? What am I doing at this moment in time? And I've always taken that to the what if. And as random times, I'll be sitting in the aircraft in the middle of a hoist, either riding the cable or whatever, and say, what if? Okay, this is what I'm going to do right now. And you take a quick evaluation, like, okay, and then you continue with the operation or the training. So, but anyway.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. That accident, the 6017, was the first 60 accident that we had where, we lost lives. Yeah. We've had several before that, but not as many as the 65s, but we've had a couple before that people got out successfully, and it was for that reason, because we always kept in the back of our mind, and we always trained. Every year we had to do our dunker train, or not a dunker, but the Heath's chair and the swim test and all that kind of stuff. So as much of a pain as that was, I loved it. There were a lot of guys who hated it, but I didn't mind.
I loved it.
I didn't mind getting the water up the nose. But yeah, it was a good time.
Man, good stuff. Well, Adam, I'll tell you what, I got one more question. I didn't mean to like totally bring that down. Well, I didn't mean to do that, but
it's all good.
Yeah. Want to remember those guys and what they did.
Talk about this stuff. It's good to talk about this stuff, to remember those, and and we don't want to stuff it.
Right. Those guys are not forgotten, and I don't ever want to. No. I don't want that. So.
Yeah.
But let me ask you one more question. So we're going to bring it back up. If you had a piece of advice that you would pass on to anybody, like with everything you've been through, civilian side, SK, all the way up to now, what would it be?
So the Coast Guard is a small service. In fact, the company I work for now has more people than the Coast Guard does. There are a ton of opportunities in the Coast Guard. You're not just stuck to your rate like you are in other services. There are opportunities to be a leader. There's opportunities to do collateral duties. And the only thing I could say is take the opportunity. Go, be willing to step outside your comfort zone and do that. That's what gave me the confidence level that when I came in the Coast Guard, I was not very confident. I wanted to be a rescue swimmer deep down. Like, I was a duck because I wanted to be a rescue swimmer, but I didn't have the confidence at the time or the strength to be able to do that ever. I'd never had the strength, but the Coast Guard gave me that confidence because it allowed me to take on opportunities that I never would have had otherwise. the job I'm currently in, I was a helicopter flight mechanic. I didn't have any physical security management experience whatsoever. But the reason I was hired was because of my managerial experience and because of my the way that we are trained to respond to emergencies and to keep our cool and to think through things as things are happening. We don't jump to conclusions. We don't get hysterical. We are made. We are to basically work through these things as they're happening. And so it was because of those experiences that I was able to find a good job on the outside. I just said, take the opportunities that are given to you. Even if you have, I don't have any, everything that I did, storekeeper, I lost 4 years. I could have been a senior chief by the time I retired, or when I got out of the Coast Guard, all that stuff. I don't have any regrets for any of that stuff. It all gave me the experience that I needed to move on in life after the Coast Guard. So
take advantage of what you can.
That's right.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adam, thank you so much for joining me today and just sharing all the stories and everything you've been through. This has been incredible. I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It was good to talk to you and catch up. Sure. Bring back some good memories. So yeah.
When I get down to San Diego, man, we're going to hit some of the breweries down there and go kick back 1, 2, or 3 of them. All right.
There's a ton of breweries. We can try to hit them all.
Okay. Why not? Tease me with a challenge, will you? I love it.
Thank God for Ubers nowadays.
That's right. That's right. We'll get from point A to point B safely.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, I love it. Adam, I will see you soon. Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, brother. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Now, it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Collins Aerospace Goodrich. Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Collins Aerospace's Goodrich hoists stay ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety.
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
And
Switlik. No mission is the same. Why should your suit be? Introducing a new custom dry suit experience. Choose your fabric, colors, neck and wrist seals, zippers, pockets, collars, and so much more. Intelligent measuring prompts ensure the most tailored fit. Brought to you by Switlik Survival Products. For more information, visit us at www.switlik.com.
When you see your friend and you want to go, but you can't. I see Chase, I see Chase. I see my friend. Let me go, Mom, let me go.